All right, welcome everybody. I'm Betsy Boja, the current president of the League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson, and thank you all for joining us today. The League of Women Voters is an all-volunteer, nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government. We neither support nor oppose political candidates or party at any level of government. However, we do advocate for public policy such as voting rights, non-discrimination, civil rights, reproductive rights, and criminal justice reform. We have been empowering voters and defending democracy in Greater Tucson for 84 years. Today, we invite all people, regardless of gender, gender identity, ability, ethnicity, or race, to join us as we commit to righting the wrongs of our past and building a stronger and more inclusive future for all of us. So welcome. And now am I handing it off to Linda McCabe, our moderator? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Hi, I'm Linda McCabe, the president-elect. I will be your moderator today. Most of the talking will be done by the project manager for Plan Tucson 2025, Cesar Acosta. Thank you very much for being here today. And with that, I'm going to just hand it over to you.
First of all, thank you all so much for coming out. It's a Saturday just to learn more about your community and what's going to be happening in it and how you can be more involved. That means a lot to me personally. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Your mission is outstanding for getting the word out there on all this stuff. And I've been a fan of the work you've seen as the candidates have moved forward, and I'm just excited to participate and give my own little side of it. And today I'm here to talk about Plan Tucson 2025. So Plan Tucson is the city's general plan. The city has a lot of planning documents. We have plans on housing, on transit, we have a plan for climate resilience, we have a lot of small area and neighborhood plans, and all of those are unique, all of those have their own engagement processes, all of those go before mayor and council. But the general plan is unique in two ways. One, it is the only one that is state required. Cities over 75,000 people in the state of Arizona are required to have kind of a vision statement saying what kind of city do you want to be long term. So this document has a 20-year scope. It's updated once every 10 years. The last time we did this was in 2013, and things have happened since then. The other unique part about a general plan is that it is voted on by the public. So this one was approved by mayor and council back in June, but that doesn't mean anything unless the public agrees with it. So this vote coming in that you may have seen on your ballots already or that you'll see on November 4th is asking to ratify the general plan for the next 10 years. And it must cover a range of documents. So state law says it has to cover how we distribute land use, how we circulate transportation, what is our policy on open space, do we have a general direction for safety, for housing? If you're near an airport, it needs to cover that. If you're near a tribal community, it needs to cover that. And so our plan seeks to cover all these general topics. The language of a general plan is pretty broad-based because anything can happen in the next 1-2 years, let alone 10 years. So we want to make sure that the policies within it are relevant, but also still give us an overall direction. So this is some example of the text you'll see for different policies within the plan. Still provides us a general vibe and direction for where we want to head, lets you know kind of the things we'd like to avoid or move towards, but doesn't list any metrics, any specifics, or any overall specific areas in the city where we'd be involved, because in 10 years, it might become irrelevant. And the problem with policies in the general plan, because this is the one state-approved document, is that you are kind of locked in with them. The only way you can make changes then is through an amendment process, which requires another vote by council, which requires another vote for the public. So we try our best to make sure that this is flexible over the next 10 years. And we need to make sure that people approve of this plan. So we've taken 2.5 years, more or less, of continuous engagement with the public to make sure this document reflects what our city envisions over the next 10 years and where we want to put our priorities. Council gave us directive at the end of 2022 to begin the process to update our plan. We would have started that process a good year earlier so that we would have a new general plan by 2023, but there was this global pandemic that happened, got in the way of some stuff. So we made sure to wait till we could start talking to people more directly again. And so the first phase of this process, which was about 8 or 9 months, was just going with clipboards to folks and saying, this is our current general plan. Where are the gaps? What do you like about Tucson? What do you not like about Tucson? What do you want to see improved? What do you want to see changed? Where are the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities? And from that, we had around 2,000 individual Tucsonans tell us what they thought, 12,000 responses, and we gathered that into around 5 central themes. So those were housing, housing, urban design and neighborhoods, access, mobility, and transportation, green space, water, and resources. We heard community resources, economic vitality, and And there was another one in there, which I'm spacing on. Yes, so those were our working groups that we worked within. And for over a year and a half, we invited members of the public to come to any of those specific theme groups, focused on what was going on in the public and what the policies should evolve in those groups, and discuss what the goal language should be, what should the policy language should be, what should the overall structure of the plan look like. And after that, we released our first draft of the plan at the end of last year. And from December of last year to June, we had 3 different iterations and revisions of the plan, each that went through different public hearings. So we had a first round of just showing the public what the plan looked like. Then we held 2 public hearings with the Planning Commission. Each of those were noticed in the Daily Star, were hybrid meetings that were held at different parts of town. And then we held a last public hearing with Mayor and Council where they adopted our current draft. And this is what it looks like. So it is 5 chapters, trying to really be streamlined. Our 2013 general plan is broken up into 4 different environments. So we have natural environment, social environment, economic environment, and physical environment. And that's a really unique and great way to frame information, but it also made it a bit difficult for people to look for the things they cared about. It was harder for them to find policies, and so we wanted to streamline it and make it very based, like each chapter is what it is. So chapter 1 is just introductory content. What is a general plan? How does it operate and exist with other planning documents in the city? We talked about the planning process and the engagement that we did to get to this point so people knew how we got to have the content that's in the document. Chapter 2 is on our history today and like what Tucson is. If you're encouraging someone to learn more about Tucson, this is the chapter I'd recommend. You know, we are the longest inhabited community in the United States with 10,000 years of history. So we condensed that down into a page of bullet points. We tried to hit the highlights. And then the remainder of the chapter is talking about our current conditions. So where are we at today? So we go over our current housing stock, our current traffic conditions, who are the largest employers, what is our economy, what's our poverty level and ratio in Tucson, and what are our biggest challenges. So we heard from the community that we wanted to make sure and not just talk about the good things, but what are we struggling with? And in 2024, 2025, that was looking at our unhoused population, which has grown over the last decade. That's been changes in climate, which have made the hotter months go from April to September to April to now, and how that makes us deal as a community. And we also looked at just how we're trying to continue to deal with poverty in our community as we are a segment of the city that has still under the poverty level higher than some other communities about our size. And then the last section of the plan is talking about neighborhoods. So neighborhoods are unique in our community in that they have a kind of a quasi-official relationship with the city. We work with nonprofits, we work with community groups, but only neighborhood associations have this relationship where we give them funds to get the word out to community members. So there's 2 newsletters that go out every year to different neighborhood associations that registered. And if you are a neighborhood or an association that's registered with the city, any change or entitlement change in the city, so if there's a zoning change that happens, anything that happens within a 300-foot boundary of your community, we inform you about. We are required by law to get that notice out. And we talk about that relationship and how not only are those the functions the city does for neighbors, but that's how neighborhoods talk to us about the things that really will change and impact the community over the next 10 years. We want that to be a central theme in us. Chapter 3 is really the bulk of the plan. There are 14 goals that Tucsonans told us that they cared most about. There's 14 goals, not one of them are priorities. So goal 14 is just as important as goal 1, goal 5 is important as goal 7. And we tried to make sure that we got what was most important as the priorities for our community overall. The 2013 plan has 25 goals. We slimmed that down to 20. Community members over the course of those revisions said way too much, way too confusing, narrowed it down to 14. And when we tried to merge or condense any more of those, we heard from one group or another saying, that was my favorite thing, don't touch that. So this is where we landed. And really the thing I just want you to know about is those top 3 goals for creating a more efficient and transparent governance, supporting a more equitable community, and being a leader in carbon reduction and climate resiliency are what we call cross-cutting. Elements of those 3 goals found themselves into elements of all the other goals. So for instance, housing, we want to look at that as how we're being transparent as a government to talk about those processes. We want to talk about how we're being equitable with the distribution of funds around housing. And we want to make sure that the materials and the ways we build new housing are with climate in mind. So how are we being resilient in those developments? So that's an example of kind of how those 3 other goals find their way into the others. Chapter 4 is all about the fact that this is a long-range plan, so it's all the projections. We talked to the Pima Association of Governance, we talked to the Druckmann Institute, we hired a few private consultants to see how many people are going to come to the city in the next 10 years. roughly 10,000 new individuals will be moving to Tucson in the next decade, but that doesn't account for people who are coming here from school who decide to stay. That doesn't account for people being born. That doesn't account for the unhoused population transitioning into housing. And so with that, we need roughly 33,000 units of homes in the next 10 years that we need to build in order to make sure that prices don't skyrocket, or to make sure that we can all comfortably live here. But we also have these goals for making sure that we're preserving open space, that we're conserving our historic resources, that we're being mindful of existing neighborhoods. So what do? This is the tool that we use in that chapter. So our future growth scenario map is not regulatory. Zoning is a regulation that tells you what you can and can't build in a property. It tells you how high, how low, what you're allowed to do with it, any landscape requirements. These are building blocks. So these different colors are building blocks, which are intended to provide character assessments. So what kind of zoning districts do you want to see in each of these areas? And then what kind of development guidance do you have around them? So for instance, that beige area is the neighborhood building block, really encouraging predominantly residential, mostly townhome, single family, or duplex with ADUs. If we do have commercial, we're thinking small scale commercial, so things like a daycare or things like a bodega. And then when you get to these pink zones where you're mostly surrounded by residential, but it's a collector level road or higher traffic, we encourage things like maybe smaller size apartment buildings or a Walgreens or a gym. Moving on to those teal zones, our major arterials, Speedway, Broadway, 22nd, Stone, Oracle. We're trying to really encourage here our higher intensity of uses. So your higher size apartment buildings, your big box stores, but with the twist that we want to make sure it's transit accessible. We're really trying to push people to have more walkability, to encourage more design types that allow for better use of bicycles or transit. And if you do, and for spaces that have parking, that they're not just bringing cars in and out. So we discourage things like car washes or drive-throughs or storage units, and encourage things like having smaller, if you have a restaurant along an arterial road, how are you able to park for that? That encourages people to be here or nearby, so that we're not like creating a giant parking lot in the middle of an area. So that's kind of the idea of the characters in each of these. But again, this is not regulatory. The intent is that we're providing guidance over the next 10 years for what can and cannot occur. And so if something comes that's proposed in one of these orange or one of the pink or beige or purple blobs, and it doesn't fall in compliance with what that is, if they can make a good enough argument for why that's beneficial to the community, it can still get built. Vice versa, they have something that fits perfectly within those sections, but it doesn't meet the community's needs at the time, or it doesn't address community concerns, it doesn't necessarily get approved. The idea is that it tells us a guidance of where we're hoping to see change in the next 10 years to meet the goals we have. So the last chapter is implementation. So it is a big, lofty plan. It's 300 pages long. It covers all these high-level value statements. How does that get accomplished in the next 10 years? So we've made sure to think about all those other documents we were talking about. So we have a plan for housing. We have a plan for climate resilience. We have a plan for transit use. And all of those have specific metrics. They're updated once every 2 to 3 years. They have specific targets and projects in mind. And so we made those the implementation method for all of our goals. So the way each goal chapter reads is there's a narrative about why it's important to the community, what the city's doing about it. Then there's an implementation spotlight, talking about the specific plan that helps implement the policies that are right under it. And in this chapter, we list all those plans together that are easily accessible. We organize them to where you know which goals they are impacting. And in our online version of this plan, you'll be able to click on and click to any of those other plans for cross-reference. So what's new in the 2025 plan? As I said, the last one had 25 goals. We condensed and merged several of those. So there was in the previous plan a goal on public safety and a goal on public health and a goal on overall wellness. We tried to think more holistically about that. We tried to think about how our public spaces are impacting public safety and how they impact our mental health, how they impact the mental health of those who might not be using the spaces appropriately, and what policies can we put in place that will encourage better use of those spaces, better activation of those spaces to encourage better physical and mental health, and enforcement in a way that isn't just putting people from one end of town to another. So we're trying to think of how we're building better mental and physical health through safety. We also have language on equity and climate. In the 2013 plan, the full title is the Plan Tucson General and Sustainability Plan. Sustainability is a broad term. And so we've, in this plan, kind of narrowed that scope. So we think about climate in the terms of resilient materials, of energy efficiencies, of how we're going to make sure that we have resources and materials that are not adding to the climate impact effect. So how are we getting rid of the urban heat island effect and things like that. We have a goal on open space that deals specifically with our natural surroundings and how we're preserving those characteristics in our ecosystems. And then we have a last goal focusing on pollution, not just trash and not just trying to be better with recycling, but also light pollution, sound pollution, and water. How are we making sure that we're having a more circular economy to where anything that goes into our city is extracted and put back in a more meaningful way? So we've thought about that a lot. And then for our economic goals, there used to be 4 of those. We've instead tried to think of them as a top-down. So we have, yes? A little better? Yeah. Sorry about that. Our economic goal is trying to think more top-down. We're trying to think about the fact that we have this regional place in our economy, so we deal with our international trading partners with Mexico and Canada. We have our tourist entries, which are internationally known. We are, by the way, a city of gastronomy. The UN recognizes us as a place to come eat. So we try to talk about how all these unique factors of our city impact our economy, but then thinking about our local and legacy businesses. So how are we making sure that the people who have been here, who are from here, can take advantage of all those regional and international focuses, and how are we advertising to benefit them? So those are aspects that we take into account for that goal. And then, again, for land use and transportation, these are very much interlinked. So we have, whatever you build on the side of a road is how much traffic comes to it. How wide or how narrow you make a road provides how accessible it will be for any land uses around it. But we tried to think of the 2 goals in separate fashions, in that land use should be thinking comprehensively. We have state plans, there are regional plans, there are neighborhood plans, and there are overall city objectives. For any change in entitlements or any big projects that move forward, how are our policies framed to where we're thinking about all those at the forefront, so that decisions are made more efficiently and that we're able to think about all those plans inclusively? For transportation, the main features were accessibility and service. So we have a number of places in our community that have great bus stops, but no way to get to them, so they're not ADA accessible, they're not accessible to children, and the services for the city are great in some areas and less so in others. So how can we push over the next 10 years to make a transit network that is reliable? You know when a bus is coming and how frequently it will be there, and is accessible to all people through universal design. We talked a lot extensively with the ADA community and with a few of the disability networks in Tucson, and that was the language they wanted to make sure was included in developments, that we're thinking about universal design. How is this accessible for all ages, all abilities, all parts of the city? And then again, interconnected. Policies from Goal 1 will appear in Goal 5, policies in Goal 5 will appear in Goal 14, because not one goal will not impact the other. These are all very much interconnected, and we want to have that be illustrated throughout the document. So where are we now? After Mayor and Council adopted the plan, we ended Phase 3 and have been in Phase 4 since then, and Phase 4 is all just about voter education. The city takes no official stance on Prop 417, which is what's going to be on your ballot, because this needs to be your decision. Also, it's against state law. So this should be something the community cares about, because it'll be there for 10 years. Like, council will come and go, but this is the document that you will have as leverage. So how we're hoping that you use a general plan is that it is accessible to you to say, over the next 10 years, I see this project coming to my neighborhood, I heard about this policy being initiated, I hear this plan is being adopted, is it or is it not in compliance with the general plan? That is something that the city staff and the city council should be saying to themselves, but we want to make sure that y'all are holding us accountable to that and telling us if it is or is not. And that is really the goal of this conversation today. Over the course of the last 2.5 years, we've been lucky enough to talk to about 5,000 different members of our community, but it's a city of 500,000. And we're looking at maybe 80 or so thousand people that'll vote, so drop in the bucket. And at the end of the day, sad to say, y'all now are more educated than 90% of the city about this topic. So I encourage you, if I have any ask of you, is just to talk to 5 people, any 5 people that live in Tucson that are voting, and just ask them, do you know what the general plan is? And when you see the blank look on their face, give them a little bit about the information you learned today, because that will hopefully make this, we feel that this is something that does reflect what our community wants. But ultimately, people will not vote for a thing that they don't know what it is. So that's why we're here today, and that's why we're really happy that you all gave us the opportunity to talk to about it. So ballots dropped earlier this week. Wow, we're already there. And November 4th is Election Day. Thank you so much again for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The way we do this at our forums is that we're going to write the questions down, and then our 2 question screeners will look at them and then hand them up here. I'm going to go ahead and start while they're processing them.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions for you. So you talked about how the content of the plan was developed. And what amount came directly from public input for this?
Yeah, I'd say about 90% of the content in this plan came directly from the interactions we had with the public. The last 10% was because this is an update process. We took the 2013 plan and said this is our base level for the policies and for the goals, and we asked the community where are the gaps? Where does it need to change? Where does it need to improve? And then, like I said, because we're trying to make sure that all the goals and policies are implemented through the various other documents, we talked to the stewards of those, so the different departments within the city. So housing, community development is the city department that deals with HAST and PCHIP, which are our two plans on housing affordability and on house population. So we want to make sure that the language that the community told us and had created jives with the work that they're doing and is actually something that they can use to implement. So that was where city staff came in to make changes. And then we heard from council, when we gave them various iterations of the draft, you missed this part, or we have a question about that part. And so that was their involvement with it. But the vast, vast majority of this came from just Tucsonans.
What happens if the plan is adopted?
Yeah, so if this plan is adopted, it becomes the new general plan for the next 10 years. So what that means is that any decisions moving forward, they have to answer the question, are you in compliance with Plan Tucson 2025? That means all its updated policies, which documents are you referring to, because that's a change from 2013 to now, is that we're asking people to look at the other plans and are you in line with those as well, to make sure that we're in line. And if it doesn't pass, it means that we continue using the 2013 plan, which is a good plan. My coworker was the project manager who created that back in 2013, but it is 10 years out of date. It doesn't include any of the projections for where we're going to be at in the next 10 years. It doesn't include any of the recently developed plans that we have. It doesn't include any of the recent community goals that we have. So things like equity, like climate resilience, like thinking more holistically about public health and public safety. Those would not be included in the old plan.
How does the plan increase shade structure that would encourage more walking areas and bike paths?
Yeah, great question. So 2 goals work heavily on that. So we have one for being a leader in climate resiliency. We talk a lot about shade space. So we're trying to make sure that we're through the use of green stormwater infrastructure, which is the idea that you create curb cuts in the middle of medians, or you're building slanted roofs for new developments, more rainwater capture, anything where you have this combination of using the water that does come to us when it comes to us to water and feed native plantings that will provide shade. So that's anything from trees to shrubs, or just not putting pavement down for things and just using like more natural rock face that is less, that bounces less radiation off of it and absorbs less and bounces more off. So those are all instances where we are trying to make sure that any new development moving forward, if they're in compliance with the general plan, is thinking about that. That's also true for our goal on water. For water conservation, we're trying to use green stormwater infrastructure, so improve our gray water systems across the city, which, by the way, are top-notch. If you didn't know, the community in Tucson has grown by some 20,000 people over the last 30 years. So since 1990 to today, we've added, we went from 510 to 520 to 550,000 people. But our water usage has stayed the same per capita. We're really, Tucson is very, very good at that, and we're better than most people in the nation. We want to continue that trend.
Just a little continuation of the water piece that you
Sure.
were talking about. Are there other pieces regarding water that fit into the plan?
Yeah, so the focus of policy within our water goal is responsible water usage, education, and how we're enforcing new technologies to come in. So for any new builds coming in, we don't want to enforce, because there might be a good reason why they don't want to use a water capture system. Let's say they're in a building that already has water capture, and they're just trying to do an extra floor. We don't want to mandate that they have to take down their building and build in a new system. So we encourage heavily the use of new water capture systems. For education, we know that there's a lot of great programs in the city that will help you, that will pay for some of your improvements to your home to make it more water responsible. So we want to increase education opportunities in the community to make sure people know about that. And then lastly, for larger developments that are coming in, that we encourage them to be water responsible ones. So that's a big drive within the new plan.
We're going to change topics.
Sure.
Okay. How would the proposed open-air women's shelter planned for Grant Road and 6th be affected by the new general plan? Is it consistent?
I would say it is. So a lot of the language within the general plan in Goal 4 is about public safety and health and public health. So how are we using our city resources? Because it's a city-owned site, is the STAR community that I think you're referring to. How are we using city-owned resources to kind of create spaces for our unhoused population where they can be safe, where they can be monitored, where we can make sure that there's a way to get them treatment and transitioned into a permanent home, while then kind of clearing the spaces for the parks around that area to be more accessible to the general public. So that's one thing. And then also in our housing goal, we really do encourage kind of a three-pronged approach for housing the city. So sustainability, making sure that older homes have home repair programs that can keep them affordable. Subsidy, so that's where we think about low-income or state-funded homes that will be income restricted. And then supply, so where are we building new homes and different typologies of homes, so more duplexes, more quadplexes, more different types of homes across the city that can be developed to keep the market rate low. And where that comes in for this type of shelter is saying we want to encourage greater flexibility for the needs across the community. So where we do need more temporary shelter, where we do need more urgent care programming, the general plan language is accepting of that. If it gets approved or not depends on the other factors in the community, of what the needs are, of what the zoning around it is. But the language in the plan would encourage being more flexible to make sure that we can have more housing.
Talking about housing, is there more specifics about how this plan will address homelessness?
Yeah, so the language in Goal 5 really is about like trying to make sure that we're providing more homes for Tucsonans overall, creating more opportunities for income-restricted units for people who couldn't afford a home through the market, and making sure that people aren't displaced from their existing home. The specifics for how we deal with our unhoused population are really found in PCHIP, which is the People's Community Housing Investment Plan. It's run through our Housing Community Development Department, and we guide people to that plan as part of the implementation chapter, or implementation spotlight in Goal 5.
Okay, good. We're going to switch a little bit now. How does the plan account for gun safety?
Yeah, so I would say Goal 4 talks about mental health, talks about health for the community. I don't know if we have a specific policy on gun safety. I think we talk mostly about how we're trying to make sure that our built environment and our public spaces are safe, and that we're providing programming for people who feel unstable, who are people who need additional support, that they can have those resources within the city. And the plans that are put in the implementation spotlight for Goal 4 are things like the Prosperity Initiative, which is a cross-county city initiative that deals with mental health and deals with safety, which talks about, I would say, the, what is it called? Another document we use. There's a few other cross-county and city initiatives that are listed in the implementation section that I would encourage people to look at. And then actually our Parks Initiative talks a lot about like how the spaces are regulated.
I'm going back to water.
Sure.
Will projects in the future, like Project Blue, be reviewed through the eyes of Project Tucson's plan goals?
Yeah, so they definitely would be. And I would say that this is an important thing about general plans, just like how they operate, is because they're meant to be flexible, because they're supposed to be high level. You can make an argument one way or another that that Project Blue is in compliance or way out of compliance with the general plan. There are goals, or there's policies within our economic chapter talking about bringing in additional resources, bringing in new developments. There's language in our future growth scenario map where it shows the most southern parts of town where there's just state land and no resources out there. That's where we really encourage the higher intensity industrial uses and such. And you can make an argument that it is in compliance there. However, a lot of our goals on water, on climate resiliency, on community impact, all those have policy language that would be pretty contradictory to the way Project Blue was laid out. And so it's up to the community to say that this is how I interpret the plan and this is how I want council to implement the plan. And so we want to make it flexible so that you can make either one of those arguments, but it's the community's desires and needs of the time that will determine how it's read.
Okay, thank you. Does the plan include collaborating with industry, example, grocery stores, to decrease plastic use?
So I would say it's a little specific, yeah. what we do have language talking about coordinating with community resources, community advocates, and businesses for climate resilience initiatives. So that's language that's in Goal 3, Goal 8, and I want to say even Goal 12 when we're talking about economic development. But nothing so specific as like specific processes. I would say that's a great that's a great project that someone could say, here's the policy language I found in Plan Tucson that would support this initiative, and they could move forward there.
We're going to move to education.
Sure.
How do you plan to ensure equitable education for Tucson when the state plan appears to drain funds from public schools?
Yeah, so we have a goal on education, and we acknowledge that the bulk of K through 12 and higher learning is not in the city's wheelhouse. Like, we don't have direct ties for those programs. What we do have is a number of extended learning programs in our park system. We have a transit system that can help people who, children or older folk who can't use a car more easily access different programs across the city, or just get to a Pima campus or to their K through 12 school. So a lot of the language that's in the general plan around education is how can we use the city's programs and resources to support education. So if there are cuts to education that they lose the ability or capacity to learn or teach people, how can the city come in through after school programming or with transit accessibility to get people to the things that help them learn?
How does the plan coordinate with county plans? Are there areas of conflict?
Yeah, so I'd say the three biggest ways that the city works with the county in Plan Tucson specifically is, again, in Goal 4, which is about this kind of holistic approach to public health, public safety. One of the documents we use for implementation is the Prosperity Initiative. So that was a joint county-city project that has its own set of goals and policies relating to mental health, to opioid addiction, to learning through poverty reduction. And all of those initiatives are put in place as part of the policy language in Goal 4. Then the future growth scenario map itself. So this map, you'll see at the edges, there's that kind of hashed red zone. That's our potential annexation area. That's all county land. So we made sure that as we're developing the types of character around the city, that we're coordinating with Pima County and what their future land uses are to make sure that we're not creating a big roadblock in the middle of something. So where you see it being mostly residential at the edges, it's mostly residential for the county. Where there are higher intensity uses at the edges, there are higher intensity uses at the county level. So there's this kind of streamlining to make sure they're cut across. We also work with them on just on active transportation. So the Huckleberry bike loop is great, and it's a wonderful resource that the county uses. And we want to make sure that we're thinking at the stops that are within or near the city, we're thinking about how you have better transit and bike connectivity to that. So the city connects to the county in those ways. Yeah.
Does the plan factor in budget and workforce availability considerations?
So again, because it's the kind of this broad 10-year document, we don't know what the budget will look like in 5 years, in 2 years, in 10 years. So it doesn't list any specifics for financing or budgeting. The idea is that when a budget proposal comes up, the community and council can be informed by the overall priorities and direction in the general plan to help make the decisions for what they should be funding. And again, I'll just say, so like the city had a much different budget 3 years ago before the state law came into effect to create a flat tax at the state level. We lost some $10 million of funding on an annual basis that we weren't planning on. That was a state, process that kind of changed how we do things here. And it might change again. There's proposals for different sales tax initiatives that have failed or may come up again, and that'll change overall funding. So we don't want to have anything too specific as far as like what the budget for the city should be.
What is the specific process for the community to direct City Council's implementation of this plan?
Sorry, one more time.
What is the specific process for the community to direct City Council's implementation of this plan?
Yeah, not one specific process, but many. Ultimately, it is you interacting with your council members or with city departments. So if there is an initiative you know about, or a project you want to see funded, or a plan you know that's being updated, I would recommend talk to your council member, or come to an event where they're talking about it and highlight to them, this is where the plan says the following. How are you incorporating that, or how are you in compliance with that? You can also go to the city council meetings or any public hearing and state your piece there as well. There should not be, or I would hope there's not just one way to communicate with the city. We want to be more goal one is be more transparent. We want to be more accessible to the public, so hopefully there's not just one way to talk to us about Plan Tucson and how you want to make sure it's implemented over the next 10 years. There'll be all these various ways, and so if y'all think of a way that you'd want to be communicative, you can talk to me. Go to our website, you'll see a picture of my face and my information. I really do want to keep the conversation going, because part of my job is, if this plan passes, that I get the chance to work on implementation. And that'll mean continuing to work with the public to see how they want to see it updated or where they want to see the priorities of the goals placed. And so please continue talking to me about that.
Along the communication line, do you know how the city plans to use this plan to engage homeowners and landlords in the efforts to address housing?
Yeah, so the main ways that the city currently uses the general plan is like for any kind of staff reports that go out. So if Housing Community Development is proposing a project, or if the Planning Development Services is doing a review of an entitlement change, one of the first sections on that report is compliance with the general plan. And so we list out the policies that are or are not in favor of it. And so it's part of our analysis. How the city council then uses that is they see if their opinion is swayed by that. Did we meet that objective or did we not? And then it really should be up to the public then to continue to talk to them about whether or not something is in or out of compliance with the general plan.
Is this a living document where people can see in real time what is implemented from the plan and how the city is adhering to the plan?
So living in the sense that, yeah, we do keep an annual report of like what has and has not been achieved over the next 10 years. So every year we'll have a report saying this is what's new with Plan Tucson 2025 and how much of it was achieved. That'll be a little easier this time around than the last 10 years because we're able to do a online version of the plan. Currently, the plan exists as a PDF that you can find on the PDSD website, but now it's going to be its own interactive website, so you'll be able to click in and see various things. And in the implementation chapter, we're trying to collect a lot of the different dashboards that the city has. So Planning Development Services has a dashboard for how quickly we get through permits. The Office of Sustainability has a tracker for how many green stormwater infrastructure projects are in the works. Housing Development Services, Housing Community Development has a list of all their different properties and which projects are being initiated and if there's open spaces available. So our plan is that we're going to gather all those different dashboards that each department runs and put them onto the page so we can see, and then connect them to the goals. So you can see this is how this goal is being met. This is how much progress we're being made.
Will the project Tucson guide development of areas like the Toole Avenue area, such as Borderlands brewery issues?
So it wouldn't speak specifically to it. And again, I think really the guidance there would be, depending on I'm trying to think of where specifically it is, it would fall within one of those building blocks. So there's development guidelines that would give for Toole, kind of in one of these downtown. I think downtown is where that's at. Yeah. So it would have these guidances for the type of uses, the kind of streetscape. And that's the broad level engagement it would have. But then it would look to the neighborhood plan that exists for that area, if there is a neighborhood plan or an area plan, and see what guidance does that give specifically about that area. And those would be in combination the ways that we're having to make decisions around those developments.
Okay, so is there a dashboard for which streets are in line for repair and renewal?
I'd have to talk to the Department of Transportation and Mobility on that one. I'm not sure.
Everybody would like to know if they're going to wake up one morning and find giant trucks on their street.
Yes.
I go to sleep with that prayer.
I will say, and this is kind of a Plan Tucson adjacent, is that the Regional Transit Authority is what funds a lot of the larger road projects in the city. So Grant Road has been under construction for a bit, Houghton has been under construction for a bit. Those are both funded through RTA, which is a 20-year project and has 20 years of funding, and that's going to be up for a vote again in March. So some of the neighborhood streets are attached to that, and most of those, yes, neighborhood streets would be city. And some of those are funded not through just general funds, but through grants. So there's several projects we have for active transportation to repave a road at a bike lane or improve a sidewalk, and those are done through grant funding. We get a little bit less of that now than we used to, but that's in 10 years, who knows? So funding at different times comes from different places, and those kind of create wacky timelines for what roads are being improved when. And so I promise you, we are thinking about it, but it's just sometimes we have to jump on this now or we lose that funds, or that was a decision made 5 years ago to roll this out and now it's about that time. Yeah, we do our best though.
How does the plan affect Native American lands?
It does not. We worked with we spoke with the Tohono O'odham Nation for where we were, again, with our map. Right here, this is TO land. And so they have a larger development happening here that we made sure that we were in alignment with. Am I still good here? Yeah, and then this is the Tucson Airport Authority. We made sure that we were working with them and the nation to make sure that was also in alignment. So we worked for that change. But really, we just want to make sure that we understand and acknowledge that they are a part of this process. They have been a part of this land, or they've been stewards of it longer than we have. So we work with them to make sure that any of our proposed developments are not out of line with what they've created. But there's synchronization, or at least we have was in the Venn diagram. We're both in the middle circle for these areas here where we touch.
Okay. Can you discuss what's covered in the climate resiliency area?
Sure, yeah. So again, goal 3 is being a leader in climate resiliency and carbon reduction and climate resiliency. And the policies there are focused on energy. So what kind of energy are we bringing into the city? Are we encouraging more renewables? Are we using more sustainable materials? So how are we encouraging people to update their windows to be more light reflective? And what grants can we provide to make that available to folks? And then where are we encouraging energy production? So if we, again, Tucson Electric is the one who actually generates power, but we have a number of grant programs to help people with solar panel improvements or connecting to microgrids. And so those are kind of programs or processes that we encourage in the city to allow for more resiliency in case Tucson Electric can't provide the power, that we have things in place that encourage the city to have its own. So just again, that's very high level to think that the vision is that we will have energy no matter where it's coming from. And we're trying to create the policies that would build that into people's homes and into neighborhood networks that make that more resilient.
How does the city encourage what you talked about regarding solar panels?
So in that goal, we talk about trying to encourage programs for subsidy to solar panels, and then also repair or education opportunities to know where they can get them and how to install them. And then, again, just working with community partners. So be that Tucson Electric or any other providers that we can have more sustainable, renewable energy sources coming into the city of Tucson.
Does the public still have the ability to influence the plan?
At this stage, not as much. Again, for the last 2.5 years, we've been working to kind of process and revise and recreate what the plan should look like. And what Mayor and Council voted on in June is what is on the ballot. So that's kind of set. But how it's used, how it's utilized, and really like where it goes from here is up to the public. So the state law requires that we have a general plan. It does not say we need to use it. So it is up to the public to make sure that that it doesn't get shelved. And yeah, I know. I worked on this for 2 years. I really want to have it be an important document. But it is up to the public to make sure that it is at the forefront. And ultimately, it is going to be continued conversations to make sure that the parts that we want to see implemented at any given time are the ones that are focused on. And so yes, the public still is very much involved in that.
What is the biggest difference between the proposed plan and the current plan?
Yeah, so I'd say like the biggest differences are just how how the focuses are put in. So 2013, we were just coming out of a recession, so economic goals and the way we thought about our economy was a very touchy subject because we were really worried about where we were at financially. Right now, what we're thinking about our economy is how it benefits our community. So a lot of it's focusing on not just local businesses, but legacy businesses, the people who've been here for a long time, but they're chains, they're still part of our community. How do we support them? How do we provide grant initiatives or efforts with our economic initiatives department to work with people on a more regular basis to make sure that they have support for any business ventures that they have? How are we thinking about our tourism industry and our natural environment in a joint way to make sure we're bringing in dollars there? The Sonoran Desert is a vast resource we have, and we want to make sure that people can share and enjoy it in the way we celebrate it. And then all of our cultural opportunities too. So we didn't have a goal on cultural preservation in the last go around. We now have a specific plan. So there's the Somos Uno cultural plan that talks about how we're promoting arts and culture in the community by building an economy around it. So we have all these opportunities to bring people here for different festivals, different engagements. We have a lot of art around the community. How are we encouraging people to see that and pay to learn more about those artists? So we are trying to build that into a part of our economy. And so those are some of the ways that we're thinking differently about it. And then equity is its own goal. Like that was something that we heard from community members very early on, is that we want to think about being a more equitable community. If you didn't know the difference in terminology, equality is that everyone in this room gets a pair of shoes. Equity is everyone gets a pair of shoes that fits. And so it's really just trying to think about data-driven solutions. Like how are we thinking more intentionally about where resources are going, more than just this area hasn't had funding in a while and this area has. Why has this area gotten more funding? Do they need to continue to get that funding? Why has this area not gotten that funding? Is it because they have other things that they're fine with and we need to think of ways to support them in other ways? So it's just trying to think about how we're doing our best for all of our members of the community to the needs they have at that time.
So in the goals, how does the plan address crime?
Yeah, so really, I'd say goal 4 is about improved health, wellness, and safety across the community. And when we think about crime, we're trying to think about root causes. So not just enforcement, again, like we don't want to just have a process where we are displacing people from a park or from a wash. We're trying to think about how we're enforcing to make sure that they're not inappropriately using those spaces or inappropriately in those spaces, but also how are we continuing to talk to them after that? How are we getting people connected into programs so that they can transition into housing or get support for a job or get support for mental health or drug rehab usage? And again, a lot of those are tied to implementation through the PIMA Prospers, which is that joint project we have with the county. Because a lot of our operations, be it enforcement or in preventative care, are tied between the two.
Now tell us again what happens if this is defeated.
Sure. So if we do not pass the Proposition 417, we continue to use Plan Tucson 2013, which again, fine plan, but a bit out of date. State law also says that we are required to have a general plan. We are required to update that general plan. So we will have to try again. The process to talk to people for this update was funded largely through ARPA funds, so the American Resource Recovery Plan. So we had good federal support. We do not have that anymore. So an update process would mean that we have to use general fund dollars to do an update. And we will do that because we want to continue to talk to the community to make sure we get it right. But what that is or how robust that outreach can be, how much time that'll take, and then more resources to put an initiative on the ballot all over again, those are things we'd have to spend on, whereas we could spend it on other things. So those are just some of the consequences we have for not voting for Plan Tucson.
My last question. What is the easiest way to read the website to learn about the changes for which we will be voting?
I'm so glad you asked. So under your chairs, no, or just on your chairs, you should see one of those little fans. On the back is a QR code that takes you to our website. There's also a couple flyers we have that talk about it. You can just Google Plan Tucson. We've made sure it's the first thing that pops up. And it's right there on the website. We have, in the Phase 4 tab is a full copy of the plan or in the individual chapters. And if you don't want to read through the whole plan, but you still want to have a better understanding of what's in it, there's an executive summary there that's 12 pages, much easier to get through, hits all the highlights. And if you want to tell your 5-year-old or 3-year-old about it, we have a coloring book available too. So that has all the goals in it to describe what they do.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about before we end?
Really just to, again, say thank you. Like, it does mean a lot. Like, I don't want to sound frivolous. I don't want to just say, oh, thank you for being here. Like, no, you all came out on a weekend when you could be doing anything else to come here to learn about what's going on in your community. And I really am relying on you all to be the ones to get the message out to other people. We have about 4 weeks till this decision is made, and then we're not doing it again for 10 years. My son will be 13. My parents may be in an elderly home. Who knows what will exist in our community, but for those 10 years, this will be the document that we use as kind of our guiding for where we are and are not going as a city. And I'm lucky that I got to be a part of the process to shape what that is, and I'm lucky I get to talk to you about how we can do that all together.
Thank you, Mr. Acosta. Thank you all so much for being here. Please take what you've learned and pass it out to people that you know and give them that QR code to look it up. Thank you so much.